Hello, Catherine here from lightheartmom.com. And today I want to talk to you about a very common symptom that is experienced in postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, and that is insomnia. And it's actually one of the scariest things that I've been through, or it was at the time at least, in life and also in my postpartum journey. But in hindsight, it actually really wasn't that scary at all, or it didn't need to be that scary. And that's why I want to share this story. It's not to put scary stories about insomnia on the internet, but because I hope that other people who are dealing with things like that find my story and maybe see just a little bit that they don't have anything to be afraid of, that it's really going to be okay. I already talked about last week on the blog and in my last YouTube video about postpartum heart palpitations. So that was something that I experienced early on. And I think I mentioned last week that it started happening at night. And it was kind of an initial experience of kickoff of my insomnia journey was waking up with nighttime heart palpitations. And it's also probably the first time that I ever really experienced a full-on panic attack, was waking up in the night with heart palpitations, not knowing why, and then not being able to go back to sleep. That was, it was something that started, and I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it and worried about it and worried about it and worried about it. Before I knew it, I just wasn't sleeping at all at night or during the day. And this went on for kind of a long time. I don't know exactly how long it was, but it felt like forever. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified out of my mind. I had all of these stories about why it wasn't okay and how there must be something really wrong with me physically that I needed to solve, and surely there was a certain specialist out there and it was up to me to find that certain specialist who could solve all of my problems. And it was debilitating, not so much because of the sleeplessness, but because of the worry about it. It was extremely, extremely stressful, and my thinking was so negative and so fearful. And it was really, really difficult. And so I did try to find specialists. I saw a few different people actually, and one of them was the Chinese skin pincher that I mentioned in one of my blog posts and YouTube videos, if you want to read more about that. But anyway, I would get a little bit of relief, but it still, I don't know, nothing really seemed to make that much of a difference. And it was so scary. And I can laugh about it now. Believe me, I was not laughing about it then. There were lots and lots and lots of tears shed over this at the time. But I can remember one night in particular. It had been days since I had slept, I think, at all. And I was like, okay, I've got to do something. And I thought about taking Unisom, and that was a big deal for me because I didn't want to take Unisom. I knew that it was not, potentially not good for my baby since I was breastfeeding, but I decided after hours of deliberation that I was going to do it anyway. And so I did. I took it that night and laid in bed. At this point, I was sleeping by myself. I had moved into a different room. Then my husband, per the suggestion of a therapist that I had seen at the time, which in hindsight really wouldn't have done that again. But anyway, that's what I was doing. So I was there by myself. I had taken my Unisom and I was laying down to sleep, listening to some sort of sleep meditation, and just worry, watching myself to see if I, would feel drowsy and if this would work, and trying not to watch myself. And it was just miserable. And it just so happens that night I did not check the weather forecast. And it was one of the biggest thunderstorms that I have ever heard in my life. I mean, I live in the South, and so we get big thunderstorms, but it started probably, I don't know, an hour or two after I started trying to go to sleep. And I mean, it just lasted for what felt like hours of just these crashes of wild, wild thunder. And I just remember lying there and just thinking the whole world is against me, the universe is against me, and also thinking, in my mind, there was this story that this is too much. This is too much. Somebody should not have gone this long without sleeping. Somebody should not be able to stay awake like this on Unisom. And surely, I think I had read some story about somebody having to go check themselves in and get medically induced to sleep. And so I had this whole story in my mind about, I'm going to have to do that. And tomorrow, this is it. Tomorrow I'm going to have to go do that because this is just too much. And, I'm not going to be able to take care of my daughter. I mean, the story just spun out. There were just circles and circles and circles and circles and circles of this story. And you know what I did the next morning? I didn't go check myself into a mental institution. I got up and I took care of my daughter. And in between taking care of my daughter, I sat in my living room, probably something like this, just like completely glazed over. But I tell you that because it is amazing the stories that our minds come up with and the rules that they come up with that are not based on anything concrete, nothing. So my mind had all of these stories about what I could handle, what was too much, what was going to be necessary, what was, whatever, and none of it was true. Not even remotely true. I was fine. No, did I feel good? Absolutely not. But I was fine. I was still able to take care of my daughter. There was nothing really, really wrong with me. And the biggest source of my misery, by far, hands down, was my thinking. It wasn't the sleeplessness, as miserable as that was. It was my thinking and all of the stories, completely fabricated stories that never came to pass, that just made me feel so miserable. And so I tell you that because, and it's also important to add that the insomnia did go away pretty shortly after that. I don't really know why it came, and I don't really know why it went. But I do know that it did. And I do know that, honestly, looking back at that night, specifically that night when I took the Unisom and when there was that horrific thunderstorm, in the moment, it felt like everything was against me. But as I look back at it now, I honestly see that I was being held by something so much bigger than me. And it was this continual unfolding of this lesson that I'm still learning. That it's not all up to me to figure it out and to find just the right thing and to fix myself. That there's something so much bigger than me that's taking care of me, that's holding me, that's sustaining me. And it's really, and not that this thing was causing my insomnia, but that I was being cared for through all of that. And it's really, really amazing, actually. So anyway, take whatever you want from this story, from this video. It's just my memory of what happened. But I hope that you can see that whatever you're going through, that it's okay. And probably a lot of the stress and things that you have come from the stories that your mind creates, probably many of which are absolutely not true. But that's what our minds do, is they create stories. They tell stories to try to feel like they're in control. And but the reality is there's something much, much, much bigger and much, much wiser and much more wonderful that we are connected to that is in control. And so anyway, I hope that is something that's comforting to you, whatever you're going through. If you want to read more, you can read a different version of the story, well, the same story, but more about it on my blog, lightheartmom.com. And anyway, until next week, take care. Bye-bye.